Kingdoms rise and empires crumble, and the knowledge and wisdom from past ages are lost to the foggy ruins of time. But for genuine seekers of truth, one place stands alone on a hill. Shining brightly in the darkness, you, dear listener, have reached the Hidden Citadel.
Hey,
you found us.
welcome to the Hidden Citadel.
Mhm.
Hey, I'm excited. You know why? Because I finished my
Wow.
book Ren Fair Magic,
That looks amazing.
and it is out. It looks a little bit like the Encyclopedia of Weird Crap because I use the same template.
Yeah, it looks
but
cool
it's
though.
a lot different information in it. And this book is like almost 40 years of performance experience in one volume. And it's got the first section is all about certain magic tricks that you can use in your Renaissance Fair act,
Yeah.
and how to create magic tricks out of old classic tricks and like polish them up to make them a Ren Fair kind of flavor.
Wow.
The second section of the book is all about. Let me find it real quick. Basically the second section is how to take basic like it's called performance and show development tips. So it's kind of like how to develop your character, how to come up with a costume, how to come up with different set pieces and things that kind of fit with what you're going to talk about in your act. And then the third section is all about like how to use smoke for your props, how to make flash paper work, like flash paper igniters, how to use like bubble machines and all sorts of crazy stuff like that. And then there's a section, the next section is about how to use sound in your act, like if you've got like different sound effects that can come in. And then the last section is my favorite. It's a bunch of songs from the Child Ballads and the Rude Index list that are songs that date back to the Middle Ages.
That's
some
insane.
Of them. And I've got the chord chart so that you can
Slick.
play the songs. And so it's kind of like, I didn't put the actual music because that's all copywritten. But you can't copyright a chord chart.
Yeah.
So these are kind of my riffs and my take on other people's versions of these songs.
Yes.
That they go way back. Like some of the recordings for these songs go back to like 1910 or something. And then some of them are from the 70s and 60s and 80s. And like there's a lot of different versions of these songs. And I kind of wrote down the chords that I use when I play them on a bouzouki or on the mandolin.
Yeah.
So they're not exactly like if you looked up Steel Eye Span and looked up, like I just turned to one of their songs, a Young Hind Horn.
Yeah.
And in Hind Horn, you can listen to Steel Eye Span's version. My version is kind of a takeoff. It's similar to theirs, but it's a different key. You're free to use it. So it's like if you want to perform based off of my version at a Ren Fair, I'm not going to sue you for copyright infringement.
That's
or anything.
Right.
And I'm in the process of recording all of these songs into 4 different Fantastic Flying Frog albums, so you can actually hear my version of these songs too and learn them. So
Slick.
And then in the back it's got like my own prop designs for some of the tricks that I do, and you can look those up and it explains pretty much how I built my props. So. And then the very last thing is my daughter is a makeup artist in Ireland, and she sat down with me and helped me write an appendix on tips for how to do makeup for yourself or for like kids if you're doing like face painting and stuff. And so she wrote down a whole appendix for me. And then, of course, I've got the end of the book is the very special, let me get to it, the very special Hidden Citadel plug for our t-shirts and our blog.
What? Our t-shirts?
Yes, our t-shirts right there.
Right there.
They are. The Yuffie and the hats.
That's right.
Woo! So you can check out this book. It will be available August the 1st, and I'm trying to pitch it to some magic companies, and maybe I can get them to carry it as well and sell it.
Such a great idea.
I know, it's such a cool book, and it's like, this is one of those things that it's like, when I was a worship pastor and a church planter, this is the kind of stuff I did for church.
Yeah.
To help
carnivals and all kinds of fundraisers,
outreach events, fundraisers.
Oh yeah.
And this is 30 years of my life doing this stuff, and it's like, so you can check it out if you are, even if you're not into Ren Fair, it's still a good theatrical thing that kind of helps you think in a more of a theatrical mindset about how to do a show. And there's stuff in there, like I even teach how to juggle. Basic juggling is in there. I've got basic contact juggling. And there's skill tricks, sword spinning. I've got some information on that. Which, by the way, for my birthday, I got a pair of swords. Which these are cool. They're Chinese Dao.
Wow.
And I love them. They got a big tiger on the pommel, and I got two. They're a twin set, so there's a pair of them.
Wow.
And, so this is going into my act as the set of swords that I'm going to be using for the Ren Fair.
That's insane.
So
where'd you get those?
eBay. I found them on eBay, and I was like, dude, I need those. They'll be perfect. And, they are a little heavy.
Are they sharp?
Yo, man, they're sharp. Yeah.
Oh, they are. So they're real.
They're carbon steel, so they're real. And I wanted them for one of my tricks. I've got a trick. It's in the book. It's called Sir Woofington's Escape, or not. And so it's the sword basket trick. And what you do is I have this balloon animal that you make, and I've got armor that goes on him. So he's a dog with armor, and you put him in the basket, and when you put the swords in, the last sword pops him. So it has to be sharp enough.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh no, Sir Woofington died. But fortunately, he had a twin brother, and you blow up another balloon, and then that time he doesn't pop.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, so it's a cool little trick, and I wanted some really sharp swords that I can make sure that he pops on cue.
Oh, those are really cool.
They're neat. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm hoping to be doing maybe this year. I'm hoping to pitch my show to a couple different. There's like 3 Ren fairs that are happening here in North Carolina this year, and I've already pitched it to 2 of them, and I'm hoping to pitch to the 3rd. So hopefully I can get booked to be at those fairs. But if you would like me to come and teach some of this stuff to your church or to your group, I would be happy to do that. And the other thing too is, if you will pay for Greg and I, we would be happy to come and put on a Hidden Citadel live at your church as well. And we've never really pitched that before.
Yep. Absolutely.
But we could take questions about how, like, people, this is something pastors don't quite understand, because they go to seminary and they listen to people, talk about the Bible all day long, and they get their little doctrinal stance, and that's it. And then when somebody comes in and says, Pastor, my father's really big into ancient aliens, what do I do about that? And the pastor's just like, well, that's just insane. Or if somebody comes in and they're involved in the occult, and they're like, well, I believe in the old gods and fairies, and they're like, well, that's just all just demons. Well, guess what? It's more nuanced than that. And just because you may not have studied it doesn't mean that there are people like us out there who have studied it in depth, and we have a whole lot more to say about it from a biblical perspective than just, they're just demons.
You're not going to really understand a lot of the, and I mean, I'm not saying I understand it all, but like, there's a lot of decisions that happen especially in the Old Testament, which people at the other end of the decision, looking at things from the outside, will say, "Why does God do that? Why does He
Yeah.
wipe out those people? Isn't He a loving
Right.
God? He's giving them a chance." Then you go back, and if you don't understand what Canaan was filled with, if you don't understand what the Nephilim were intended to do, if you don't understand what the fallen ones, if you don't understand the Watchers, you don't understand that
You're totally off base.
that you don't understand a lot of the theological reasoning, or that my ways are above your ways, my thoughts are above your thoughts. However, that they are thoughts and ways, they also mean that they're accessible. Those two words, if it were something else, they're synonymous with things that we experience, because we have thoughts, we have ways, but ours are failing, where God's are good. God's are perfect. So we, in pursuing them, we can pursue an understanding of both of those things fully. No,
Exactly.
But if you are meandering through the Bible and just go over and say, well, God just must wipe them out because whatever, then you don't understand. You're missing out on the fullness. It's almost like you're looking at a one-dimensional drawing, rather than a what do you call it?
A technical spec or something.
Or what's it called? It's what's the three-dimensional light one? A
blown up?
No, it starts with an H.
Hologram?
Hologram, like a hologram.
Yeah.
Because that requires light and then space and then time. And that's what really the Bible is. It's more of a hologram than it is there's
a lot more to it than what people want to say, and that's why another reason why I'm so anti-systematic theology to a certain extent, especially when you're looking at like reformed systematic theology, because it puts God in a box and it puts everything in a box, and it draws conclusions that aren't correct.
It puts puts God in a human box.
There you go, right there.
That's
in
the
a
problem.
Human box.
And so you're like, God must be doing what humans do. No.
Yeah, no, that's not how He works.
No,
and then
that'd be a failing system.
Of course, and then they sit there and they'll say something that's completely and utterly evil, and then their excuse is, well, He's God and He can do whatever He wants. It's no, He can't.
Guess what religion that is? That's Islam.
Islam.
Because Allah is all good and all bad.
Yeah, and all bad.
I just listened to it. I was actually infuriated because I was in a church service, which the pastor he was talking about it's almost like that idea of why a good God does bad things. He doesn't do
He doesn't ever do bad things.
And if Jesus said only God is good, like I was sitting there, it got really bad for a while. The 3 points though in the bulletin that people were supposed to follow. It was submission is the first one, obedience is second, and renewal is the third. I was like, guess what? It's a religion has that as its tenets. There is submission, I submit. Obedience, you're following, and renewal blindly, is the entire shaving of the head, doing the whole thing. And guess what? Those acts are not a part of faith. They are acts. They are not a connect. They are not a relationship at all.
Exactly, and that's the thing about. I'm thinking a lot lately. I'm going back through thinking about some of my friends that have passed away, who maybe had some aberrant theology in their upbringing or whatever, but they love Jesus.
Yeah,
and I'm like, God is a merciful, loving God, and if your theology is a little bit off, He's merciful and kind. It's just, are you putting your faith in Jesus, or are you putting your faith in you?
Yeah.
Or are you putting your faith in your theology?
That's
and
big.
It's like you cannot put your faith in your theology, because your theology can change over time.
Yeah.
And people make a god out of systematic theology, and it's not a good thing. Is it good to study theology? Yes. Is it good to be dogmatic about it? Probably not, because
Nope.
it's the kind of thing that the more you study, the more you've got other puzzle pieces that you've got to fit in.
It's interesting too, because you're studying theology, you're studying kind of man thinking, right? Man thinking, because ology is the study of theos, or be God,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it is the same it's more of the scientific study, because that ology is very much the science, the kind of the scientific study that you have in biology, that you have in sociology or
Sure.
psychology. That's the kind
Yep.
of ology that means. It's not the same as pursuing God's thoughts and God's ways. So I
Exactly.
saw something this week that just kind of blew me away, and you're when you're pursuing it and you're open to it and you have an understanding of, not an understanding. If you pursue the understanding, the enrichment that you receive from it is far greater than just than the reduction, because
Mm-hmm.
what's happening with the theology, psychology, sociology, biology, it is you're reducing it down to an understanding. You're taking the broad and bringing it down to a system, or a concatenation of words and of thoughts and stuff, and system and laws and that sort of thing. It
Mm-hmm.
does give you understanding, but it's reduction almost to the point of
Yep.
you being able to understand, right? So I saw this. I can't remember what it's these YouTube shorts, and it's these two guys. One guy is asking the question. The other guy has gray hair, and he always, like, he was talking about. Yeah, it's really. I think you've probably seen it before, but he's
Sounds
ta-
familiar.
he is talking about. It's so interesting. He's talking about how old Isaac was when Abraham brought him up the mountain with
Oh,
him.
yes.
Did you see that? And
I
it
didn't see it,
blew
but
me away, because
I've thought about this a lot.
he said, all right. So he goes, we always think that Isaac was this little guy. It was just like, like under
No.
10, like, and
No,
he was
he
being,
was practically, he's basically an adult.
well, all right. So he said, but there are, in the early studies of Judaism and the Talmud, even Josephus, they put him in his 30s. Okay.
Oh,
And
that's
wait,
interesting.
wait, gets
And guess
better.
who else was in his
Guess
30s?
who else? Wait, it gets even better. Who carried the wood up the
Isaac
mountain?
did.
Isaac. What was the wood intended for? For him to be sacrificed on.
Yep.
That's carrying the
Yep.
wood of your sacrifice up in obedience to God, and then God providing something in its place. That is the it is
Yep.
the it is the it's the sequence, and it's the perfect comparison of Jesus.
Ever ever since I read Kierkegaard in
Yeah,
college, I've
yeah,
thought about this, and I've thought about, I wonder if Abraham was kind of the test subject, and God was the faith that God applied to Abraham was, do you have enough faith in me to sacrifice your own son?
yeah,
And if you do, then I'm going to have enough faith in humanity to sacrifice my own son.
yeah.
It was
That
almost like a test
that
for the entire
parallel.
world.
It is, and you see, and he said, when you are shown to be my people, you will be my people. Like, it's just
Yep.
like, I mean, it is that whole thing of him carrying up this. Why am I carrying up essentially his own cross?
Exactly.
The work involved. I'm taking it up, and then also Abraham saying at the bottom, God will provide Himself a lamb,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
right? He will provide
Yeah.
Himself, and so
Yeah.
he had that faith that this was he was going to go through everything that he was supposed
Yep.
to for the
Well, and
sake
it
of.
doesn't it say in Hebrew too that he had enough faith that he believed God could raise him up from the dead,
Yeah,
even if he slayed him. And
yeah,
it's like, wow, it's like, no, God promised me this son, and I'm
yeah,
standing on that promise. And okay. The story of our house when we moved here to or not to Austin, to Winston.
yeah,
We were like, where are we going to live? And we
yeah,
looked and looked, and we found this house, and there was a piano in this room that I'm in right now. There was a piano right in that corner. And we walked in and we were like, wow, this is like a great house. It's like got, the right amount of bedrooms, a
yeah,
couple bathrooms. It's got this piano. And so we asked the rental place, does the piano come with the house? And they're like, oh yeah, the owner's a pastor and his wife is a social worker, and she used to teach piano lessons out of the house. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm a pastor, my wife's a social worker, and I teach piano lessons. Like, this is weird. So we're like, well, we'll take it. And then after about a couple of years living here, I contacted the actual owner, and I was like, hey, if you ever want to sell the house, keep us. Oh, no, we'll never want to sell the house. And then 6 years into living here, which is longer than anywhere we'd lived when I was in ministry, 6 years into living here, the oil tank broke outside the house and the bottom split the day after they filled 300 gallons of oil in the oil tank, and it dumped 300 gallons of oil into the ground and right into my basement.
Oh my gosh.
And it's actually on record as the worst oil spill in the history of North Carolina.
Wow.
And so basically they had to come in, dig out the basement, dig out the foundation, take all the dirt off to have it cleaned. I don't know what that entails.
Put Dawn dishwashing liquid on the ducts.
Yeah, right, on the ducts. They had they put in, the EPA came and put in some kind of a monitoring system and all this, and they ended up fining the owners like $30,000 or something.
Wow.
And we were like, dang. And they asked me, they needed a statement because they wanted to know if it was my fault. And I was like, in my lease, I am not supposed to mess with that system.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to call the company and have them come. And from what I understand, it's the oil company that's supposed to maintain that.
Yeah.
Well, the oil company that was hired to do it was not maintaining it. And so there was a lawsuit, apparently. Well, in the process, the owners came to us and they're like, do you guys still want to buy the house? And we're like, well, yeah, sure. And they're like, we just want to get out of it. All we want is what we paid for the house and enough to cover the fine from the EPA.
Yeah.
And so we basically were able to buy our house in 2019 at the price, or maybe it was 2020, right in the middle of COVID. It was 2020. It was the summer of COVID.
Yeah.
We were able to buy our house for the price that it cost in 1988.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I say that to say that God gave us this house, you know? And so every time we are in a pinch financially and we're like, oh, are we going to be able to come up with the mortgage money this month? I always say, no, God gave us this house.
Yeah.
This is the house that God gave us, and He's going to provide. And every single month, He provides what we need. Yeah, to pay for it. And so that's my whole thing, is like, that's what faith really is like Abraham had that faith where he was like, no, I fought and fought and fought and struggled in faith until God gave me that promised son.
Yeah.
And I am not giving up on Him taking care of this son. And if I have to kill him, He'll bring him right back to life again.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's probably where Abraham was at.
Yeah.
You know, when he was going through all of that. So it's just faith is an interesting concept, and I feel like systematic theology does a really good job of dismantling faith.
Yep. Absolutely. Because
especially Calvinist systematic theology.
Wait,
because really, when it comes down to it, Arminianism is not a new theology.
No.
Arminianism is just a correction saying, wait a minute. And Arminius was saying, wait a minute, you guys are off base. That's not Christianity. And so Arminius gets his own theology when all he's really doing is pointing back to what Christian theology is.
Yeah.
And
what was I going to say? Oh, shoot. Calvinism. Oh, so what happened? Did the piano end up outside? Is that the why that piano?
So eventually it got to the point where the piano wasn't tunable.
Yeah.
And so we were like, well, let's take it outside. I'll get some keyboards. I had keyboards anyway. So like, I'll put my keyboards there, and then what we'll do is we'll turn the piano into a big flower pot. So that's what happened until like a couple months ago when it fell apart and we actually had to haul it off to the junkyard. So now Etta found me on Facebook Marketplace a baby grand, so
Ooh.
I'm trying to talk Lige into helping me pick up this baby grand so I can put it in the yard and make that my flower garden.
It doesn't go in the house. Most people play their pianos. I plant them.
These are like crappy old pianos that are falling apart that people want to get rid of. And it's like, well, why not turn them into something cool like that?
I've had 2 people offer me free pianos in the last 5 years. Like one is a baby grand, and the other one was a stand. Beautiful. They just like, we don't know what to do with them. If you
Flower
come get
beds.
you come get them. Just come. They're real working pianos.
Yeah.
Like, beautiful.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but they're like, you want it? Just take it. I'm like, wow. We already have a piano at our house, but it's like,
right.
I'm amazed by that.
You could put a really nice piano right behind you, and then you could paint Hidden Citadel in the interior lid.
Ooh, that's right.
Anyway, we're not talking about that today.
No, we're not.
What we're really talking about is Tartaria.
Tartaria.
And I've got a little intro to read here.
I can't wait.
So we can get started. In the shadowy corners of the internet, a sprawling alternative history has taken root. One that suggests a vast and technologically advanced civilization called Tartaria once spanned the globe. According to believers, the empire left behind monumental architecture, free energy technologies, and complex infrastructure that modern historians have either misunderstood or deliberately erased from the historical record. Known as the Tartaria theory, this belief system connects disparate threads, the mud flood events that supposedly buried cities, anomalous buildings with spires and domes attributed to Tartarian design, and old maps that label parts of Central Asia as Tartary, a name long used by Europeans to describe large unknown regions beyond Russia and China. Adherents of the theory claim that the true history of Tartaria was systematically wiped out in the 19th and early 20th centuries, often citing lost architectural marvels from the World's Fair, mysterious orphan trains, or apparent inconsistencies in the historical timeline. Some go even further, suggesting that the current global order was built atop the ruins of this forgotten empire, using its technology while hiding its legacy. While the theory may sound outlandish, it taps into a deep distrust of authority, a fascination with lost civilizations, and a desire to re-enchant the past, making it surprisingly popular in fringe communities online.
Yeah, I like the concept of it.
Oh yeah, it sounds like a fun thing.
Oh, it is just a mythology. It just it wasn't well thought out.
No.
Just because it's so recent. I mean,
yeah, it's like really the early 20th century. My grandfather lived in the early 20th century, and some of the buildings, like okay, so we both were from the Midwest. You're from Chicago. I'm from Richmond, Indiana.
Yes,
and the buildings of that time period that they're saying were, from Tartary. My grandfather helped build one of those buildings back in the 1920s. So it's like, it's nonsense. It's just such ludicrous thinking. The only thing was, there was everything back then was manual. It was all manual labor.
Yeah.
Also, you had free labor from prisons in that time period.
Yeah.
So a lot of times if you needed rocks quarried, well, there were prison gangs that were out there busting up rocks and quarrying them for you. So it's like, rock was an available material that was easy to get and work with at that time. Mm-hmm. But to sit there and say, oh, we've lost this technology and we don't know when this stuff was built. For heaven's sakes, half the time you can go down to a library and, libraries, what are those? But you could go down to a library and you can find the blueprints for these buildings still in the library somewhere.
And it goes into like some of the, like some of the Vatican or the Roman kinds of things are like ripped off.
Well,
from
it really
goes,
it's really the same thing as like our gripe with Calvinism.
Yeah.
It's this idea of, I want to fit together all of these things that don't make sense to me, and so I'm just going to extrapolate whatever I want to that makes sense to me, and then that must be the answer. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, if you don't do enough research, you're going to come up with all sorts of asinine ideas that are not true.
It's such a bummer because, like, going through it, I'm like, that'd be kind of cool. It's just they didn't think through. It's like Gary Gygax came up with this, or Gygax,
Right.
whatever. Like,
It's the D&D.
It's the
Tartaria theory.
D&D. That's really what it is. Like, to keep on the Borderlands. It's so mythological. Like, it's just so fantastic. It just,
well,
you can't link it to anything. It's just silly.
It really is like a sci-fi retelling of history.
You know what? Actually, you know what it's like? It's really like, I might get in trouble for this, but it's like the way when the apostate religions grew out of Christianity, and they would just try to, because they're incomplete and they're fallible, they're phony, and they're human and they're materialistic.
Yep.
You just keep sewing together when you have something that just doesn't work in the theory. So like Islam was like, well, Alexander the Great,
exactly.
or Muhammad, he married this and wanted this and wanted this. So you just keep adding. You add to your book what you want, but it doesn't. It doesn't flow. Like, same with Mormonism.
And it doesn't necessarily match the history.
No.
Oh my gosh, Mormonism is the perfect example, because there's not one shred of evidence for anything that's in the Pearl of Great Price or the Book of Mormon. That as far as the historical stuff, it's complete made up nonsense.
It is Gygax.
And anybody that wants to sit there and do the research will realize, oh, this is not true. I don't understand Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck is one of these guys that seems like he really likes to research.
Yeah.
And it's like, how can you be a Mormon then? It's like, dude, just do the research and you'll realize that it's a bunch of lunacy.
But it was interesting because both those strains, like offshoots, they have their own book, they have whatever, but they're all very humanistic. They're anthropic. They're very anthropic and anthropocentric, I should say.
Yes.
Because in the big picture, the great ending to everything is for them to gain the stuff of materialism and flesh and the life and all that stuff. And all you're doing is promising to people who are either suffering or just going, man, I want something more than this. Guess what? You'll have it all.
Sure.
And so what you're doing is extracting the spirit and extracting the omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent God from the theory, saying at the end of it, you will be that. You'll have everything you want.
Yeah, but you're going to be just like God.
It sounds just so silly. Like you're creating something for a 6-year-old.
Yeah. Well,
a bedtime story.
I've been going through the Septuagint this year and reading through the book of Kings and Samuel.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I noticed is there's a lot of abbreviated stuff about the different kings, and it's like, oh, this king did that, and aren't his deeds chronicled in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings?
Weren't they also?
This king did that, and it's like, but he's not important. God hated him, so he was punished. That kind of thing. And it was like, really, as you read through it, that was my interpretation. But God was displeased with whatever he was doing. The point seems to be that the books in the Bible are written to show what God did.
Yeah.
They don't care about what people did necessarily. They're a chronicle of how God stepped into history, and people notated these occurrences and said, we prayed about this and then this happened.
Yeah.
We prayed about that and that happened. We disobeyed and then this happened. Why would you write down about all of the failures of your kingdom?
Yeah.
Otherwise,
yeah.
Nobody else in history does that.
No.
They always write about how great they were in the past, and the Israelites write about how wayward they were
Like,
in the past.
and in the history of everything, it's a lot of times it's the land and it's the accomplishments and all that. It's the kingdoms and all that stuff. But the Israelites are just still waiting to be a kingdom in a lot of ways.
Yeah, really.
And you'd think how is this whole theology or religion based on a people that really don't have a land that just seems to be dispersed everywhere, and everybody hates them. Like it's just wherever they go, it's just like it doesn't make any sense, and yet it makes perfect sense.
It does make perfect, and we saw that this week. And the funny, well, not funny, haha, but odd.
Yeah, odd.
The
ironic,
odd thing
ironic,
was in this week. This will be weeks ago by the time this comes out.
Yeah.
2 Israeli Christians were assassinated in front of the Israeli embassy, and we literally walked right past the Israeli embassy 3 hours before it happened.
Wow.
And we were there in D.C. at the time, and it was like, dude, if we had been a few hours later,
you could have
we
stopped
could have been either that or we could have got shot ourselves.
Well, not if you had those swords. If you had those swords.
Yeah, if I had those swords, I would have taken that guy down.
Yeah, I didn't even know about it. I just got a thing from one of my friends that said, "Hey, it's the religion of peace. Guess what they're doing?" So that's all it said. I was like, "Oh my gosh, yeah." But it's really
and the Palestinians are the victims.
Yeah.
So it's okay to shoot, innocent people that aren't, doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
I'm fed up with, like, I've got some guy in my neighborhood that's got a Palestinian flag up, and I'm like, are you dumb? I mean, really, have you done any number one, there are no Palestinians. They're Transjordanians.
Yep.
They're Jordanians that flooded into the area when Britain created the state of Israel. Before that, nobody lived there.
Yep.
So it's like it's people need to do their history. Again, people need to do their history. It's like this Tartaria thing.
Yep.
There is the whole thing about history being some great mystery that nobody knows about is nonsense. Now, we do believe here on the Hidden Citadel that way back in time, there's a lot of evidence that shows that in the pre-dawn time of history, there was somebody building really big structures, and we don't know how they built them.
Yep.
We kind of fall into the idea that maybe they were Nephilim, and they were the giants that the Bible mentions. Other people, like Graham Hancock, think that they were made by aliens.
Yep.
We've joked a little bit about how we think the aliens are just maybe demons that fallen angels that went into the interior of the earth.
But then you also,
and it could be.
And then you also have like the part where Cain is going throughout the earth. He's going to the land of building going to a city that already exists. Or that he's building
he builds it, and he brings people. Where do those people come from?
And afraid of people on the earth who might come after him, and he needs a mark on them. Well, who are those people? Where do they come from? Like
exactly.
So there are, and then my one of my favorite things is something you said was that when he said. God said, "Be careful because sin is knocking at your door." And door is a structure inside a building, a specific structure inside a building. So there must have been architecture. There must have been things that they're not just living in caves. They're just sleeping, under the stars.
No, they were out there. And the thing about it, too, is why do you have a house? To protect yourself from the exterior elements. Whether that be rain, whether it be snow, whether it be a lion or whatever. You have a house with a door to keep disaster out. And it's like if they had been kicked out of Eden, which was an idyllic place, the first thing they would want to do is build shelter. First thing they did was get clothing.
But that is a shelter. That is a clothing is a covering.
It is a type of shelter.
A covering, a house is a kind of covering. Yeah, exactly.
And so what Cain did was he goes and says, fine, I'm going to get kicked out, then I'm going to build a big old massive city. I'm not just having a house. It's like it's just further rebellion against God. I mean, just the idea of building a city was his defiance, basically.
You wonder if that was like, in the way that sin becomes incremental. You have, first you have the clothing. Or then first you have the knowledge of the rebellion. Then you have the clothing, and God clothed them, so you can't really say that was a bad thing. But then it's like Cain going out. All right, I'm gonna build a city, and then you get to Genesis. Is it 11? and then
Yeah.
and then you go, all right, it's not just a city. We're gonna
Yeah.
build
They want to build a
we're
tower.
building a mountain.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, and so we do believe that in ancient times there are mysteries that we think other people might say, well, that's a nonsense, that's a conspiracy theory. But really, the Tartarian thing is so bogus that it's like but the problem is, and the reason it exists is because there are people who have never set foot in a library to do any kind of
no,
research.
there's just I'm telling you, it's scary Gygax. It's just like
Yeah.
you just like then there's the mud floods. It covered the only little things that I know in the Vatican, and then like it's just like
Yeah.
makes no sense. Like it's just it's.
And
I wish it
the
did.
thing too is we do have number one, there are mud floods,
Yeah.
and we can trace them back to Noah's time, which
Yeah.
was way before Tartaria.
Yeah.
And a lot of good Christian scientists have done a lot of work on the mud floods in Noah's age.
Yeah.
But one of the things that they talk about is how you'll have a building and then all of a sudden the street will be built up over top of the building, and like there'll be a window right on the ground. Well, that's obvious. There must have been a mud flood. And it's like, or here's an alternate idea. Maybe when they were building the street, they needed to build a better structure to carry the weight of the new trucks that were coming through.
Yes.
And so they couldn't just stay where they at. They had to build up. And that house was just like, well, it's eminent domain. Sorry, pal, your window's going to be ground level.
It's just
I mean, doesn't that make a little bit more sense?
It does. It does. It's just so silly. Like I'm listening to this. Like it's hard for me to like when I'm listening to it. I'm reading and I'm like, wait a minute. This is just this. Is, I feel like this is like a 10-year-old coming up with
I know.
Well,
we were watching that video too of the guy. His channel is the Lore Lodge. And I get the feeling that and I get the feeling he must be a Christian. He's got a
weird Bible. He's got a
and he does do the weird Bible thing
Yeah.
too. And I was watching his video. I'm about an hour into his almost 4-hour
Rant.
debunking.
I know.
Yes,
He's mad.
But you know what? He does a really excellent job of tearing it apart. And what I never understood or caught until I watched his video is just how anti-Semitic the Tartaria theory is, because they basically have said that everything that happened in the Bible to Israel actually happened in Ireland, and it's not, the Jewish people didn't even exist.
Yeah.
And so you talk about, one thing is to go ahead and try to exterminate the Jewish people, and then another is just to say, well, they never existed in the first place. So that justifies in other people's minds, okay, well then I can attack and go against the Jews then, because they're fake and they never existed in the first place. But when you do real history, you find out, oh no, guess what? They did exist.
Yeah. But I don't understand. So in Tartaria, the story, which is still silly to me, there's a big, massive land like Pangea, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happens to it? Is tectonic shifting?
Okay. No, that's not necessarily what it is. It's a big, massive, uncharted land between Siberia, Mongolia, Moscow, and Turkey.
Oh, okay.
And that was a massive empire that basically had influence over the whole world for a lot longer. And the Middle Ages didn't exist, and the Roman Empire didn't exist, and it was all that was backdated and made up later in the books to hide Tartaria's existence. And it's like, really? So if I go to the London archives in London and I dig out a manuscript from the Middle Ages that show people living in France or living in Italy at the time of the Middle Ages, and the book carbon dates to 1456, then that's actually fake. But I'm supposed to believe what you wrote on the internet, that's just typed up
Yeah.
on Reddit out of somebody's mind. Come on, people. I mean, we got to have a little bit better bit of scholarly study.
Yeah. More interesting fiction.
Exactly. Let's talk about this.
Okay.
I think we've discussed it before, but I think it would be a good place to put it in this to kind of go on. I think if people tune into our show, they're going to be like, Greg and Willy are nuts. They believe in fairies and they believe in ancient aliens and they
We
believe
are nuts.
in.
Yeah.
We are a little bit nuts. I will say that. But we are coming at it from two people who actually have gone through the master's level study,
Yeah.
in school. So it's like we're not just basing our theories on
It's not
bad
whimsical
research.
or capricious. Right.
Yeah, so like kind of give our listeners sort of a litmus test of our thinking and how we like examine these things.
Well, with anything, with anything that you're trying to prove, like in the Renaissance era, if there was this, you'll see it in Marlowe's writings and in Shakespeare's writings. When someone is asserting something, they'd say sic probo, which means thus I prove. And then when they say sic probo, it really means thus I prove, which means I've given enough evidence from many different sources. Even in the Proverbs, it says the wise person has the counsel of many, not of one,
Not
of
just
many.
one.
So in order to really understand and sift through something that you're going to draw a conclusion on, you have to kind of force it through the strainer of many kinds of different
That's the key.
yeah,
Different
kinds of meshes of I'd be trying to think of a strainer metaphor, but of different kinds of textures and that sort of thing in order to see what comes out in its purest form, in the same way they do with like gold.
You nailed
sifting.
it. You nailed it with saying different.
Yeah.
Because the Tartaria theory, just because you have 1,000 people on Reddit saying, well, this is what we believe, that's not what we're talking about.
No.
We're talking about people who have vastly different ideas, and we're comparing them, like you said, to get the gold out and to find out, okay, here's a nugget of gold here, and there's a nugget of gold there, but this guy's off. Like Gary Wayne. We like Gary Wayne, but there's a lot of stuff he says that we're like, yeah, no, he's wrong about that.
Yes.
We liked Heiser, and everything he said was right.
Everything. And Mizler mostly.
Yeah, mostly.
Except Y2K. Y2K, not so much.
Yeah, and the Rapture.
The Rapture.
Yeah, but pretty much all the other stuff was good. But what do we do? What is our standard? If you're going to judge something, you have to have a standard to go back to. And what is our standard?
The Bible.
It's the Bible, yeah. But also, we try to use scientific reasoning to understand the Bible. We're not just saying, well, that's what the Bible says, bless God.
Okay, so no, you're bringing up something good, important here. Like, in order, like, back to that sic probo, that thus I prove idea, you are not doing that for yourself. You're doing that in kind of a self-presentation and self-perception way. Assume the mind and the brain and the understanding of somebody else. And in order to do that, you almost say, well, what would convince me? What would convince me would be a multiple source reduction of taking away all the unimportant information. It's like Occam's razor, and just getting to plurality is not to be assumed without necessity. You're getting to the most important conclusion. You and I talk about things all the time where we'll say, all right, here's what it says. All right, here's what we're thinking. All right, where else does it say that? Well, it says it in Genesis. It says it here.
Exactly.
It says it in here. So we're taking it from multiple sources. The Apostle Paul, when he's explaining something, he'll say, guess what it said in Job? Which nobody touches. And then it'll say, it also says in Genesis, it also says it in Psalms. Jesus does the same thing. It's a matter of taking, like, the wisdom is the counsel of many. And that means the counsel is the input. And not only input, the augmentation, but also the reduction. Because the counsel of many comes in, people come in and say, well, let me give my input on that. And you go, ooh, when you said that, you took away what was, my assumption here. And now I'm not going to assume that anymore because your input essentially carved off the fat of that particular, and I'm hungry,
Yep.
of that particular piece of meat, and now I know I have a more pure
Mm-hmm.
portion now
Yep.
that I can assume has the most quality to it.
Well, and the other thing too is we both have talked a lot in the past about cognitive dissonance
Yes.
reduction. And we try in our own lives, I've known Greg long enough, and I think he knows me long enough, that we will entertain other opposing views, even like we mentioned with Islam or Mormonism.
Yeah.
Why do we laugh at Mormonism is because we've actually looked into it
Yeah.
and we've actually studied it, and then we realize, okay, this falls short.
Hmm.
We are perfectly willing, and a good Berean, a good, theologian
How noble are the
needs,
Bereans? Yeah.
yeah, you need to be able to say, okay, I will listen to what you have to say.
Yep.
And like even today, I was doing research and I was listening to a pagan talk about early English paganism.
Hmm.
And it's like, I'm listening. Maybe they got something that I can learn about history
Yeah.
of paganism that I don't know yet. But what I found out is interesting. A lot of people. This is a tangent, but it demonstrates a point. A lot of people want to point to Herne the Hunter
Hmm.
as being an ancient connection to CERN and Cernunnos.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And what I found out is that the legends of Herne the Hunter didn't even come around until the 1500s.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, well, maybe the people in the 1500s were connecting him to CERN or Cernunnos,
Yeah.
but it's like, maybe not. And it's the
Yeah.
same thing with Mithra. A lot of people want to say, well, Mithra predated Christianity and blah, blah, blah. When you actually study it, you find out, no, Mithra actually post-dated
Yeah.
Christianity and was a response to Christianity taking over.
Yeah.
And so it's like when you do the homework and you do the research, you're always going to find something new. And so it doesn't hurt you
No.
if you're a Christian to sit there and study what the other people believe and think. How are you going to reach anybody?
Yeah.
One of my best friends is a pagan. And we have
Yeah.
some of the greatest. And he was like, am I your only pagan friend? And I was like, no, I've actually got several pagan friends. And
Yeah.
it's like, and he was like kind of miffed because he felt special that he was my
I want to
only
be the
pagan.
only one. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to be the only pagan friend. And it's like,
But
sorry.
look at Paul, the Apostle Paul. He would go to the people and speak in in their value system, in their what their religion was, in their idolatry, in whatever it was.
Yep.
He goes, "Oh, you have all these guys. Guess what? This is the God that you're missing here. The one that's unnamed. That's the one I'm
Yep.
talking about." He would go if they're speaking in intellectual, he will say, "All right, I can speak in intellectual. If they're speaking in legalese, I can speak in
I can
legalese."
speak that way too.
So, but you have to understand your audience and understand the basic belief systems and the kind of the theories and the way that not only do they fail, but why they're perpetuated in the first place in order
Yes.
to reach the people and speak on their level.
Yep. And I think that kind of opens up a topic too, or at least a warning maybe,
Yeah.
about how deeply involved you need to get in your church if it's a certain type. If you have a church that it's like, well, our Bible is the only Bible you need to read, and our doctrine is the only doctrine you need to listen to, and
Yeah.
our way of thinking is the only way of thinking, then you're aligning yourself with an isolationist group
Yeah.
that has a leader
Yeah.
that is afraid to be challenged.
There's a guy named Jeffrey Grider, and he has a website and a whole ministry. And, his heart's in the right place, I'm pretty sure. But it's called Now the End Begins, and I think I've sent it to you before. And he is like angrily King James. Like he's like, you do not ever look at anything other than the King James Bible. The King,
Oh.
you will not. And he's like, and then he's mocking other. He loves to if there's a Christian or a leader or somebody that says something that's not King James, he'll say, "Oh, you Laodicean," you blah. He calls them names and all kinds of like you're failing on so many levels here.
I know.
Because
You know,
I mean,
I
how many different languages did Paul speak
I
to those
know.
people? How many different versions of things? Because
Yep.
that's really what it is. When you're using a King James version, you're using a type of
Yep.
translation, a type of language, a type of dialect, a type of
Yep.
approach. But you have
Well, and in our whole episode
yeah,
on Shakespeare,
yeah,
we uncovered the Francis Bacon connection to the King James Bible and to the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, and to
yeah,
Shakespeare's sonnets and all that. And it's like, I'm wondering if our conclusion about who wrote the Shakespeare stuff or who edited it is right. Makes
yeah,
me wonder if he also had a hand in editing the
yeah,
King James Bible a little
yeah.
bit too.
And just the amount of changes, in that.
Yeah, it's
Um,
just I don't
yeah.
know. I can't deal with that kind of thinking
Well,
because
it's so not only rigid, but it's destructive because, and
yeah, and
it really doesn't have its place in. It really doesn't
especially
have.
when you think about the King James is based off the Masoretic text,
Yeah,
which was a text specifically written to counteract Christianity's spread.
yeah, yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, you have to have the King James version,
Hmm.
which basically says that you have to have a Bible that was designed to counteract Christianity's spread, and you're trying to spread Christianity with it.
Yeah,
It doesn't make any sense.
no, I know. But anyway, I like the. I mean, the amount of information I get, is because I get these emails every day. But this guy knows stuff like as it's happening, like
Wow.
almost before other people do. Like this just happened, and then I'm like, wait, when did this happen? I'm thinking it was 3 years ago, and then like the
It was like
news,
2 seconds ago.
yeah, the
Yeah.
news comes out with this just happened. Like, how does this guy know this stuff? But
Yeah, he probably has a feed of from Reuters or something
yeah,
directly that he's following.
yeah,
I just but here's the thing too. We completely and utterly disagree with the guy, and yet we'll listen to him just to
absolutely.
kind
Oh no,
of
he's
get
got great points, and
yeah, because
I
he's got some stuff.
I'll tell you, I think he's a brother. I do really do think he's a brother. It's just that, his approach is just it's like the way that, Paul with Apollos or,
Yep.
where Jesus would say, like, all right, why are these guys doing this? It seems like for their own reasons. But if it's the gospel, it's the gospel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about I feel a little bit bad. I don't feel convicted. I want to make sure that I
Phrase this
state
right.
it this
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
that I phrase it right. I don't feel convicted about this, but I do feel a little bit bad about being so harsh on people like James MacArthur.
No.
Because like Gideon, my son, is in a place and somebody was really nice
Is it
and
John?
bought and he needed or John MacArthur.
Yeah.
He needed I'm thinking James because Gideon's middle name is James.
Oh.
He needed a Bible for a study Bible for
Yeah.
his class,
Yeah.
and somebody was nice enough and went and bought him a James MacArthur study Bible or John MacArthur study Bible. I'm getting it right.
The Book of James.
Yeah, the Book of James. So he went and got a John MacArthur study Bible, and the pastor at the place had recommended it. And I said, "Is your pastor the guy there a Calvinist?" He's like, "Yeah, he's Assemblies of God." And I was like, oh, "Okay." I said, "Well, you just got to recognize that we don't quite agree with some of his." He's like, "Yeah, I've already kind of realized that with some of the stuff that he talks about."
Yeah.
But I said, "You just got to be careful because the John MacArthur translation that he uses is not a bad translation.
Yeah.
I think it's the ESV." I said, but you just got to realize that it's geared towards Calvinism and
Yeah.
pointing out, their thinking and their occult, and
Mm-hmm.
and I don't feel bad about saying that Calvinism is a cult because it is an aberrant religion. It's an aberrant form of Christianity. Can people who go to Calvinist churches be saved? Absolutely.
Yeah.
There are people that are sitting in Calvinist churches that love Jesus and they're
Yep.
just not. They're just fooled by these phony theologians
Yeah.
that think they're intelligent, and a lot of these theologians are fooled by their teachers as well.
Yep.
Can somebody that's pushing a Calvinist doctrine be saved? Maybe.
That's
you
funny.
know,
That's a really
but-
funny statement. Just think about
but-
that. Can they be saved?
Yeah.
Well, if they're predestined.
Yeah, right. But that's the same kind of question as can somebody in a Mormon church be saved?
Yeah.
Or can somebody in a Jehovah's Witness church? Yes, I think they can be saved. But the minute the Holy Spirit starts to work on them and they start to see more and more light, they're going to realize I'm in the wrong place.
Yep. Yeah.
And this is coming from somebody who went to 3 different Calvinist seminaries.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm not speaking of something that I don't know about.
Right.
You know, I'm talking about something that I'm very well acquainted with.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I do not think that it is a form of Christianity, because you've got a God who is Gnostic in nature when you're dealing with Calvinism. And Calvinism is just the first of the modern Gnostic movements, is really what it is. You know, and so that's kind of where I fall, and it's like and it's a boon to be humble.
Yeah,
when you're learning and you're studying your theology and you're studying this kind of information, you should just go at it to say, I don't know, maybe there's something interesting that I can learn from this. And don't go in to anybody thinking they're going to tell me all the answers. You know, just be like, I'll see what I can learn. I love listening to Gary Wayne, but I know that when he talks about C.S. Lewis, I'm going to be like, no, you're wrong. I totally disagree with that. I know that when he talks about soul sleep, that I'm going to be like, yeah, that sounds very Seventh-day Adventist.
Yeah.
And I'm still not sure how closely aligned I feel Seventh-day Adventists are with actual doctrinal Christianity either.
And he looks like a real estate agent. Let's be.
I know.
Gary, he looks
maybe
like
that's what he does. I don't know what he does for a living.
Coldwell Banker. Gary, I'll sell your house.
He would probably do well at that. Anyway. I watched Hacksaw Ridge last night. Have you seen Hacksaw Ridge?
No.
It's an amazing movie. Mel Gibson directed it. It's a true story about a guy who won the Congressional Medal of Honor because he was one of the early conscientious objectors. He was a Seventh-day Adventist, and he didn't believe in carrying a gun, but he went to like the biggest. Oh yeah, and he dragged like 80 people out of the battle and saved their life.
Yeah.
And so I was talking to my daughter about it because we watched it, and she's like, "What are Seventh-day Adventists?" And I was like, "Well, my wife and my uncle was a Seventh-day Adventist, and I was like, I think he's saved, but he really has some dumb ideas." My wife had friends that are Seventh-day Adventists, and she's like, I don't think they're Christian. You know,
it's funny. They are a mystery because I've been to Seventh-day Adventist they're not healings like the Assemblies of God. It's a praying over somebody who is injured. It was Noah, and they're like, we have a prayer ministry. That's what, and they were solid, you know. But then they have their rules, and their rules are taken,
and their prophetess.
And their prophets, and and their prophecies and their failures there, and their aggressive, discipleship kinds of stuff they have there. But it's funny. I've a couple of Christian friends of mine who's like, well, I've some Seventh-day Adventist friends, but we differ on some things. But there's not enough to say that they are that different, like Jehovah's Witness or Mormons.
So I looked up Martin, the guy that wrote The Kingdom of the Cults.
Yeah,
his final take when you look it up in the book on Seventh-day Adventists was basically that they are Christian, but they're aberrant in a lot of their theology.
Yeah.
And that was kind of his take. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe that's how I should feel about Calvinists, that they're Christian, but they're aberrant in their theology. And maybe Calvinists don't need to be lumped in with Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses, but maybe they should be in that Seventh-day Adventist camp where they're not really Christian, but they're kind of Christian.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're on their way out of being Christian, and with a gentle push could easily not be Christian anymore.
Gentle push. It's so ironic to say the Calvinists, they wouldn't be Christian anymore. It's so funny. Oh,
well, I mean, they're Gnostic.
I know. Thick with meaning. Anyway, we got to wrap this up.
Okay, before we wrap it up, we have to pitch a pedal. Have you thought about it?
Yeah, I was thinking the Guitartaria. The Guitartaria. The Guitartaria. And it's just it's a big, massive pedal that really
That doesn't do anything.
It doesn't do anything.
It just has lights
you
on
plug
it.
it in and it fails within the first couple strums because
There you go.
because nothing happens.
I don't think Josh Scott's going to make that one.
No.
I somehow doubt that. It should do something.
It promises a lot and does nothing.
No, it's got to have something with mud. It just muddies up the signal.
Muds the signal. Yes.
Yes.
Wait, it has floods it and muds it. So
there you go.
So you hit the one, you hit the gain, and it goes boom, and then immediately just like
it just gets all dark and
covers
weird.
Everything that you're trying to
like it squelches it.
Like
it sounds like
absolutely.
Yes.
You get the flood and the mud. That's awesome. That might be
there
actually
you go, Josh.
Good Tartaria.
Yeah, that would be cool. I like that. Okay, so we got pitch our stuff. Listen, if you love us, go check out Hidden Citadel 4.wordpress.com and read our articles and everything over there. If you were very offended by our critique of Calvinism today or anything else, you're probably going to find something over there that really shows more of the background research and what we think about that. So that's the place to go. Also, go to where is it? I lost it.
We have
Redbubble.
Redbubble.
Redbubble.com, and you can buy the Hidden Citadel t-shirts over there. And there's a ton of them. You can get hats, you can get bags, you can get whatever. And I forgot to tell you, as I was traveling this week, whenever we stopped at a gas station, when they had a bulletin board, I stuck one of our Hidden Citadel poker cards up there for people to be able to see.
I think we have
hopefully
a Facebook page, we have YouTube, we have Instagram.
Yep, and we've been getting more people friending us on the Facebook page. And it's who is it Greg Citadel or Hidden Greg or
something like that.
It's something like that.
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Citadel.
Hidden Citadel.
Crouching Tiger.
Greg crouching in the Hidden Citadel. Or something like that. Also, we got books. You need to go buy the Encyclopedia of Weird Crap.
Awesome.
It will make your life wonderful and perfect.
Yep.
Not really, but you'll love it.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. There's other stuff. We've got a lot of other books out there. Just look us up, Greg Kemp and Willie Minix on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, and you'll find us. And until then, I guess just stay in the Citadel.
Yeah, because night is coming.
The watchman replies, morning is coming, but night will soon return.